While we're waiting for the last few people to jump on, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Linda Petroni. I'm the team leader here in Sydney, or one of many team leaders. Today, you've got two wonderful other team leaders that are joining this cooking session. Laura Jacobson will be presenting today, as well as Kirsty McGibbon. So you're very lucky. You've got the top notches in here cooking for you today. And I think given the numbers that we've got and based on our information, are you girls ready if we just start? Yep, happy to start. Okay. So thank you all for joining us. Today's class is really about mastering the basics of your Thermomix. Regardless of model, there's always some wonderful cooking basics that you need to get started in your Thermomix. What we'd actually sort of recommend, if you are an owner of the Thermomix and you've got some questions that you may be struggling with, you might be a new owner, keep those questions if you can towards the end, and we're happy to have an open chat. If you've got some curiosity around the TM7, given the recent announcement that the new TM7 is launching, again, if you can actually hold those questions until the end. The recipes that you're going to see tonight are featured recipes that can be cooked in the TM6, but also can be cooked in the TM5, 31, except for some of the high heat functions, of course. But, you know, they will be able to be cooked also in a newer model as well. So let me just run through what we're covering today. Most of you, when you would have seen your registration, you would have seen the dishes that we were covering. We're looking at some basics like whipping cream and getting that precise result and what to look out for, making butter, and who doesn't want to save money and making their own beautiful butter. Buttermilk that can be also used in cakes and in breads and all sorts of recipes. Sautéing onions and how to get the best result possible. Now that we've got this beautiful high heat function, Kirsty will touch on that as well. We're making a lovely pumpkin soup and we're getting into that yummy warm weather. I even saw a bit of a chill in the air today, so that was good. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to really inspire you to get cooking and just fine-tune some of those basic recipes. So our first presenter tonight is Kirsty. And I'm going to spotlight her and take myself off. There will be an opportunity when the girls are talking about certain things that they're using from our mix shop, which is the Thermomix official store. I'll be popping that information in the link in the chat for you so you know how to find it. But also you'll get a lot of that information when you get your final email at the end with a recording as well. So here we go, straight over to Kirsty, and I'll just unpin myself and I will spotlight you. And I'll unmute you. Yes, I was going
to. Linda. We're, all of this technical stuff happening here, spotlighting and muting and whatever. So welcome to my kitchen this evening. As Linda said, I'm going to be making a beautiful pumpkin soup. Thank goodness it's a little bit cooler today. But I'm also going to be showing you how you can sort of tweak recipes. The guided cooking is fantastic on the TM6. But a bit like the GPS in your car, you are not locked in. You can still go your own way if you're that sort of a cook. So the first recipe that I'm going to show you tonight is not actually the pumpkin soup. We're going to start off by doing some caramelized onions. So this gives you a beautiful depth of flavor that you just don't get at the lower temperatures. But before we even start cooking our onion, I'm going to show you the fabulous cutter and how this can make really short work of things like potato bakes and, onions for your barbecue and things like that. So I'd love you to pop in the chat whether you have got a cutter or not. If you've purchased very recently, you might have received a cutter with your Thermomix because it is one of our many gifts with purchase at the moment. But it is also a host reward. So if you've had a Thermomix for a little while and you don't have a cutter, that's a great way of getting your hands on one. Okay, so the first element of the cutter is the drive shaft. So this just clicks onto the center of the blades like so, and really important that you remember to remove that at the end of your cooking. It's a piece that lots of people have had to replace because they've forgotten and they've gone to make something else and then they've chopped it up. So remember to pull that out at the end. Now we're starting off with a nice clean dry bowl. All of the food is going to be contained in the cutter basket. So that just pops in at the top like that. And oh dear, yep, good advice. We've already got one drive shaft that's been chopped up. Okay, so the cutter disc is a double-sided disc. So depending on which side you have up is the function you're going to be doing. Now, you're probably not going to be able to see it on the screen there, but there's actually etching on the disc itself that is very easy to see in real life. So side one is for slicing. So there's pictures there of thick and thin slices, or if you have it side two up, there's pictures of grating in two different thicknesses. So we're going to do some slicing. So I'm going to have side one up, and I'm just going to pop it into the lid like that. And we're going to thick slice my onions, which we're going to cook on high heat, and then we're going to add them into our soup. So I'm just going to swipe across on the screen to the page here with all of these different modes that we can operate manually, even when we're not necessarily following a guided recipe. So I'm going to come down here to slicing, and it gives me the option on the screen here, hopefully you can see that all right, of either thick or thin. So I'm just going to load up the chute here with my onions. It was a very big onion, so I've just quartered it. And the pusher, it's really just, it guides your food through consistently so it doesn't jump up and down. So I'm going to turn that round to thick. So I'm not forcing it through. I'm just guiding it. 2 seconds, and then the other half of my onion. Another 2 seconds. You don't necessarily have to stop it in between. You could keep throwing the food in there if you want to. Okay. No tears. Look. So I now have in my cutter basket my beautifully sliced onions. And, you know, you could do a whole bag of onions, pop those in the freezer in a Ziploc bag and have them ready for a quick go-to. Actually, now I am crying because the fumes are coming out, but I haven't got it all over my hands, which is great. Cutter shaft comes out. Ooh. Oh, the sooner we start cooking those onions, the better. All right. So I'm going to go into the menu now, and I have already selected, oh, goodness, I'm just going to move that out of from under my nose, a really nasty onion. So I've already gone into the app on my phone and oh dear, okay, I am still crying. Right, it would have been so much worse if I'd had to cut them by hand, because I would have taken the top off my fingers with the crying. Okay, so I've already selected my onion recipe, and so I've just come into the menu and I'm going to click on my week. Oh. And I have selected the sautéed onion recipe. So later on, while the soup's cooking and we've got a little bit of time, we're going to share the screen and show you how you can find whole collections that utilize the high temperature mode, because that is a mode that you can't operate manually. You can only do it through a guided recipe. So we'll show you how to find these recipes. They're a really good one to save so that it's available on the hard drive of your Thermomix. So here's our sautéed onion recipe. I'm going to click Start Cooking and add 20 grams of olive oil. Love, love, love that the scales automatically pop up. There we go. And then my onions. So 200 to 300 grams of onions. So I'm just going to pop that in there. I reckon it's probably all of that will be in that range. Yes, perfect. Cook it all so that I can stop crying. There we go. Now, the next step of this recipe says without the measuring cup, but we need to use this piece instead. Now, if you're very new to your TM6, you may not have come across this instruction in a recipe yet, but this piece will only be when you're using the high heat through a guided recipe. And the really important element of this piece, the splash guard, is these little clips on the side, because they get locked on with the lid so that you can't be tempted to take a peek and when you've got that really hot oil spitting around in there, caramelizing your onions. So you have to acknowledge that instruction before it lets you actually proceed to the cooking step. I'm going to give that a spin for it to start. Then we're going to jump across to Laura, who is going to, I think, whip some cream for us. I'll give us a few tips there.
Hey everyone, my name's Laura. I'm going to be showing you how to make butter, but first I'm going to show you how to whip cream because that's the only ingredient in butter is some cream. I've bought pure cream because I don't want any thickeners in there which could potentially be harmful additives. Not really sure too much about that. So pure cream is a good one. It is also sometimes discounted because most people buy the thickened cream and then it's discounted to go. So the first thing to do when whipping cream or making butter is to put your butterfly on. Now, the rule with the butterfly, I'm hoping you all know, is not to go past speed 4 with that. I've sat it on top of my blades, and if you give it a little anti-clockwise twist, like tiny, it actually locks in place much better than if you don't do that twist. I'm going to press start on the recipe. Some recipes, this is kind of cool. Some recipes have little videos. If they think maybe you aren't sure how to do something or they want to just really make sure, sometimes there's a video to show you what it wants you to do. So there's a video for that. So I am going to pour in the cream. The scales come up, so that's always handy. For this, I'm just going to use the whole punnet. But in other recipes, the scales are handy. And making sure I get it all. Okay. And now the next step, now in most recipes, it asks you, I'm going to show you this. In most recipes, it has already set a time. And now all you need to do is come here and choose a speed. So I am going to make sure my lid is on. So I'm choosing speed 3. But this one said, you're not going to set a time because we're going to watch carefully to avoid over whipping. So that's something interesting about whipping cream and making butter, but particularly whipping cream, because if you over whip it, you're going to get butter even when you don't want it. So the time can be very different based on the fat content of your cream and also the use by date. If it's closer to expiring, it actually whips quicker. So that's something to know as well. So what you can do once it's going is take off your measure cup and just watch and see. You can also hear when it's starting to get thicker, you'll hear it change. So that's the things about cream. So that's probably one of the only recipes I can think of where you're using a guided recipe and the time isn't set for you. It's because it wants you to stay close. Usually we can leave the house when the Thermomix is going, but this one we're staying close by. So, and if you have any questions about whipping cream or anything, please feel free to ask in the chat. Another thing that's good for whipping cream is to make sure your bowl is nice and cold. If your bowl is still hot from making something earlier and washing in the hot dish water, it's not great for whipping cream. We want a nice cold or room temperature bowl. Okay, looking good. I could hear that it was changing the sound. So I've taken it off. And now we've got our beautifully whipped cream. Hopefully you can see. Perfect, the way I like it. And that's also a bit subjective because some people like it softer and harder. My dad likes it very firm whipped cream. So I've just scraped it down. That's the end of the whipped cream recipe. Obviously, we've got whipped cream. So I'll just press next. Yeah, but I want to show you the butter recipe. So, which starts the same way as whipping some cream. So I'm going into the butter recipe. And the first step asks me to insert the butterfly and the cream. And now, when I start this, I have a message. I want to show you the message. it says to prolong time, if necessary, until the solids and liquids have separated. And now I can hear that. I want you to hear it. Hopefully you can. It's got really loud and it's like zoom, zoom, zoom. I don't know if you could hear it, but I'm going to show you it anyway. Oh, how long did the whipping cream? It was less than a minute. It was very quick. Oh, I almost lost some buttermilk. So hopefully you can see that my liquid has separated from my butter. And now I'm going to pour that out. I'm actually going to use my strainer. I'm taking out my butterfly. Oh, I know this by memory, but better follow the recipe. Taking out my butterfly. And you can, there's two ways to do this. You could sit this in a bowl and strain it through, or sometimes what I like to do is just sit this in my Thermomix and strain it out that way so that the butter stays in my Thermomix bowl, because that's where I want it. So hopefully, I need to put my screen down a bit. Just straining out that buttermilk. So the process of making butter is around 5 minutes total, but it is something that uses some more active involvement from you as the cook, not just everything is done in the Thermomix. So now that I've separated out that, I'm also going to squeeze some more with my spatula because I really want to get it all out. I'm just like pressing on the butter around the place. That's going to get more of it out for me. And you can also just use your spatula to keep the butter in the bowl. And the more you press, the more you'll get out. Now, what you could do at this, before this point, I'll just mention, you can flavor some of your butters. So if you read the tips section on your butter recipe, there's some tips to make like honey butter or herb and garlic. So before we even started whipping the cream, we could have chopped some herbs and garlic, and that would have, the flavor would then be in that whipped cream and in this beautiful butter. Another thing you can do when we're finished making the butter is if you want it to be more like spreadable butter, you could add a little bit of oil to make it more spreadable. But what I'm going to show you is how I keep mine spreadable out on the bench. Okay, so that's enough for me. I'm happy with how much I've squeezed out of there. And now I'm going to wash the butter. So we're putting in 500 grams of chilled water. It has to be cold. Obviously, if it's hot water, you're going to be melting this butter, and we don't want to melt it. We just want it to be washed. So, and 500 grams is approximate because we're also going to be tipping this out as well. It's just enough to wash the butter. So that'll do. I'll just show you what that looks like. The butter doesn't mix in with the water. So this is just a quick wash, 5 seconds on speed 4. Now we tip out that water. That water is like no good to you anymore. So I'm just going to tip that out, and then we have butter. Now, some people like to wash their, I'm just tipping it out in the sink. Some people like to wash their butter twice. If you really want your butter to store longer, you want to get as much of that milk out as possible. So when you buy cream, the expiry date on that is mostly because of the milk content. What we've done is we've taken out the milk and we're left with the butter. So the expiry of it is much longer now. So the more you clean it and wash it, the longer your butter will last. but even just that should last 2 weeks in your fridge, or you can also put it in your freezer. Now I'm just going to show you how beautiful this butter is. And you can use gloves for this if you want. But what you want to do is squeeze out as much of that water as possible. This is the fun part. It actually feels really cool. You want to squeeze out as much water as possible, and you're left, and you can shape it in a log or however you want to shape it. I'm going to just put it in a bowl actually, because I want to show you how I normally store my butter in a butter bell, but my butter bell already has butter in it. So I'll show you that. Yeah. So I'm just squeezing and squeezing. You want it out. Well, I do. It's not bad for you to have the water in there, but just saying. Now you can salt your butter as well. So now would be a good time to add like a teaspoon of salt, or to taste however much salt you want. You can whip it back on for another 5 seconds on speed 4, and that will incorporate that salt into the butter before you turn it into its log. I'm just going to tip out the rest of that water. So there we have our butter. Beautiful homemade additive-free butter using pure cream. And we've also got our lovely byproduct, which is our buttermilk. I need to wash my hands before I carry on. Sorry. I want to show you the butterbell, but I need a second. And then, yeah, I think Kirsty was saying spreadable butter, you add some oil. Yeah, make sure it is a flavorless oil. I said that before, but I didn't say. If you use olive oil, it's going to be very strong. So use a light olive oil or grapeseed oil or something like that. I actually like just leaving it pure. So this...
The amount of oil depends on the consistency required, isn't that right?
Yeah, you don't need much. I think the recipe says 50 grams, but you could use less even. Now I can show you something actually you may not know. If you want to see the tips on a recipe, I'm going to make sure my bench is clean. When you're in a recipe, if you come up to these 3 dots, you can go to the recipe detail, and you can scroll very down to the bottom, and you see all these tips and variations. So here's where you would find out. So spreadable butter says add 50 grams of oil. Yeah, it tells you exactly what to do. So tips are really good on all the recipes. So check those out. They're always good. Yes, but I want to show you the butterbell. That's right. So this is available on the mix shop, and what's so good about it, it's very old-fashioned, but it allows you to store your butter on the bench without going bad. But that means it's spreadable because it's not in your fridge going hard. You put the tinsiest bit of, I've used filtered water in here, like just to about up to there. You smoosh all your butter in, and then this stays upside down here, and anytime you want to use it, you just open it up and your butter's ready to spread, and it's beautiful. The water makes a seal so that it stays really fresh. Like you can tell, I used to keep my butter out on the bench just in a normal butter dish, and it discolored quickly, and you could tell it didn't smell quite right. It wasn't quite good. The butterbell, you can tell that the butter is staying very nice. So that's that. Smoosh is a very technical term. I hope you liked that. So now I would love to show you one of my favorite things to make is bread. Oh, I need to go to my week again. A buttermilk bread, because what can you do with buttermilk? And I'd love if any of you have tips on what to do with your buttermilk golden, like this is so good. This is expensive to buy at the shops, but you've made this yourself out of cream. So if you have tips on how what to use your buttermilk for, please put that in the chat for everyone else's benefit. But I'm going to show you a buttermilk bread. So I'm just going to press start on this. It's pretty easy, like it's really good. The first ingredient, and I haven't washed my bowl, have you noticed? Because there's just butter in there. So don't need to wash the bowl. I'm putting in 180 grams of buttermilk. Remember, you're going to get these recipes as well sent to you. And I'm just watching the scales here, which is just one thing I love about cooking in the Thermomix is not having to use measure cups. And then I need some water, which I've put over here. So 200 grams of water. Don't want to go over. That looks good. And now the recipe asks for 2 teaspoons of dried yeast or 20 grams of fresh yeast. If you can get your hands on fresh yeast, then that's great. But a lot of us just use dried yeast, which you can get in the baking aisle of the supermarket. When putting the yeast in, I don't know if I can show you, but I won't be able to show you. If you can imagine what the blades look like with the centerpiece, I avoided putting it on the middle so that's around the edges where the milk is, where the milk and water is. Now this yeast, this is a note, it's kind of important for baking. Make sure your yeast is active. So when you buy your yeast, it's really good to store it in the freezer. It stays powdery and scoopable even in the freezer, but it just makes sure that it's going to stay active over a longer period of time. We're putting on our lid. And we are going to activate that yeast for 3 minutes on 37 degrees, speed 1. So that's just your body temperature, which is the perfect fermenting kind of temperature. Another great thing about the Thermomix is that temperature control. So, you know, if you're wanting to temper chocolate or work with yeast and yogurt or cooking milks at that 80 to 90 degrees. And then we obviously have our high heat that Kirsty was showing us, but each temperature is important for a different thing that you're doing. And it's all just formulated in here without you having to even stress about using a thermometer. So it's really, really easy. Thank you to our Thermomix to making us look like we're fabulous chefs.
You want to touch some of the flours maybe that they can use, because different flours, we always get lots of questions about different flours for breads.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'm going to put in baker's flour. Now there are different types of flours. For breads, baker's flour is what's recommended. It's going to give you a lighter result. It's got more protein than plain flour. Now this says plain flour, it's baker's flour. If I've used plain flour for bread and it has still worked out, if it's all you've got, still make that bread. It's still going to be really good, but you will notice a difference if you do get baker's flour. It's going to be a nicer bread. Don't use self-raising flour. That is a mistake I've had some customers make. They think, oh, rising, we want it to rise. But remember, we've already got that yeast in there. We don't want any other raising agents other than that. So yeah, baker's flour is perfect. You can get it in, you can't usually buy it in smaller bags, and that's what sort of puts some people off. It comes in like 5, 12, or 25 kilo bags. But trust me, once you start making your own bread, you will use that flour. It's just so beautiful. You can make all your pizza and focaccia and hot cross buns leading up to Easter, cinnamon buns. This buttermilk bread's beautiful. I do scrolls for my family's lunches. So instead of taking a sandwich to school, we make the cheese and spinach scrolls that are in Cookidoo. Try that recipe, it's delicious. So yeah, different flours will give you a different result. Yeah, so that's good. Thanks for asking that, Linda. Oh yeah, someone's asked storing the flour in the freezer. I have heard of people doing that. I think it would last longer. I go through mine quick enough. I think if you're going to be storing it over a year, then it's a good idea to store it in the freezer. Because I'm pretty sure flour has a 12-month shelf life. Another thing you can do, which your question led me to think, is that if you're grinding your own grains can store in your pantry like indefinitely as long as you don't have bugs. Grains just have the longest shelf life. So if you are grinding your own grains, you don't need to stress about expiry dates. But yeah, if you're buying pre-milled flours, then yeah, that is something to consider. So thanks for that question. Okay. We've activated that yeast, and so now I'm going to add that flour. And it's asking me for 500 grams. So if you are one to grind your own grains, we've got a beautiful recipe called basic bread rolls. Give that a try. It uses 100 grams of grain to 400 grams of flour. So you can see that ratio. We still make 500 grams total, but you get to choose the ratio. So sometimes I do a half-half mix because I like that wholemeal, like extra nutrients in there for my family. And I'm just adding in a teaspoon of salt, and I've milled my own. You can see it, maybe you can't see. It's pink because I mill this myself in the Thermomix when I buy pink Himalayan rock salt. So I got my own additive-free cooking salt. I love the Thermomix because I get to choose the quality of my ingredients. So I'm just going to be mixing this for a few seconds. And then we're going into dough mode. Now, dough mode is the equivalent of 20 minutes of hand punching, where you really need to work those arms. It's arm day at the gym. Or just let the machine do it for you for 2 to 3 minutes. And I would love to point out now this glider board I've got my Thermomix on. The glider board is a free gift at the moment for anyone who is purchasing a Thermomix, along with our other gifts. There's over $1,000 worth of value coming. But this means I'm like actually pushing really hard. I don't know if you can tell. The Thermomix is staying put on the bench no matter what you're doing. Now, kneading dough is one of the ones we tell people. Stay in the vicinity of your Thermomix because it does shake a bit when you're kneading, and we don't want it to move on your bench towards the edge. So your Thermomix needs you while it's kneading. That's kind of how you remember that. But the glider board means you don't need to worry about that because it will not move until you want it to. And when you want it to, all you need to do is pick it up with 2 fingers and it can glide along the bench. So that's why we love our glider board. It's just perfect for us to be sturdy when we need it to, and then not when we don't need it to. Yeah, what other questions does anyone have about bread? There's so many different types of bread you can make in your Thermomix.
We haven't got any at the moment, but what about if we leave you with this and we go across to Kirsty, because her onions will be finished sautéing, and then we can
Absolutely.
come back when you're ready to shape your bread. How's that?
Okay. All I'm going to do in the meantime is put it in this map. Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Go.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I jumped the gun
Go.
there.
Oh,
Stealing the spotlight.
no, okay. Jump over to you.
We'll go back to Laura later, and you can see how the dough has been wrapped in that mat and risen beautifully. So yes, my onions have finished, and I want to show you this color. So particularly for anybody here who might be upgrading from an older model, the color, the ability to brown was missing in previous models of the Thermomix. When you're on high heat mode, still a bit hot there, the TM6 can go up to 160 degrees. So that's how we can actually get this beautiful caramelization. I'm just going to move that around a little bit because look, it can be a little bit scary if you've upgraded from a previous model. And the first time you use the high heat, you might notice, just try to move it so you can see, there's a little bit of caramelization, that browning stuck on the bottom of the bowl. And that is completely normal with the TM6. That's where you're going to get that beautiful depth of flavor. With these onions done on the high heat, it brings out the sweetness in the onions. Yeah, amazing flavor. So we're going to leave those in the bowl, and I'm going to jump into the pumpkin soup recipe now. So that was the sautéed onion recipe. So I'm just going to click through to finish that. We're not going to chop them up because they're going into our soup, which is all going to be blended up at the end anyway. So I'm just going back into my menu, and I'm going to select the pumpkin soup recipe. Now, a little trick that you might not be aware of, you don't have to start from the beginning of the recipe if you don't want to. So often you might be making, I don't know, a quiche or a pie or something, and the first section of the recipe is making the dough. Maybe you've already got some pastry. You might just want to jump straight to making the filling, or, you know, some other recipe where there's different sections. So in this case, the first 2 steps of this recipe are actually chopping and then doing the onions at a lower temperature. But because we've used that caramelized onion recipe, we're going to skip that and start from step 3. But before we do, I'm going to show you another bonus tip, because, you know, this is why you come to these classes. Let me see if I can just move that a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. If we scroll back up to the top here, it currently says that this recipe is 4 portions. I'm going to click on that box there. This is actually a scalable recipe. Now, not all recipes can be scaled. It's a very manual process. So we've kind of started with the most popular recipes and then working our way through. Everything has to be triple, quadruple tested. But in this case, we're going to scale it down to 2 portions instead of 4, so that it cooks in a quicker time. So when you scale a recipe up or down, it changes the quantities of the recipe of the ingredients. And sometimes it's not as easy as doubling or halving. It might be, you know, an extra third, for example. The basic muffin mix is another good one to have a look at, where you can go from I think it's 12 muffins to 18 muffins, or vice versa. So it adjusts the quantities, it adjusts any of the cooking times. So in this case, we've gone from a 20-minute cooking time down to a 15-minute cooking time. So now I'm going to click on step 3, because we're going to skip the chopping and cooking the onion, because we've already done that as our guided high heat recipe. So we're now being asked to add the pumpkin. So 250 grams of pumpkin. I've got slightly more than that, 290. It didn't seem worth saving the extra 40 grams. So that's all going to go in there. And I'm also going to do my own thing here. Instead of carrot, I had a small sweet potato. Sweet potato is a little bit starchier. I like a thicker soup, so I'm going to use sweet potato instead of carrot, or you could use a regular potato, or you could actually follow the recipe and use a carrot. It's up to you. It will still work. Okay, so lid goes on with the measuring cup this time, because now we're going to chop all of that together. We've got 10 seconds on the clock. We're not cooking, so there's no temperature set, and it says speed 7. So a quick spin round, and we'll give that a quick chop. Because the bowl is hot, it's got a soft sound. Zoom tends to mute us when we're doing things like chopping. What I was saying is, because the bowl is hot, or it was, the red lights were still on. When you're chopping something and the bowl is hot, it gradually increases the speed for you. So it will factor it into the recipe and give you a little bit longer chopping time as well to account for the slower start. So there's our chopped pumpkin and sweet potato. Just going to scrape that down. Not one. Oh, and the onion, of course. Oh, I've already scraped it down. And now we're going to add our water. Again, keeping an eye on the scales. And then everybody's favorite, the beautiful vegetable stock paste. So if you're very new to Thermomix, maybe you've ordered a Thermomix and it hasn't arrived yet, we highly recommend that the vegetable stock paste be the first thing that you make with your Thermomix, because it's going to appear in a lot of recipes. It adds beautiful flavour to your recipes, but you know exactly what's in it. So it's all just different vegetables and herbs, some salt, because that is going to help flavour your food. 1 tablespoon of that is the equivalent of 1 stock cube. So you'll usually add it with 250 mils of water, or a cup of water, which is exactly the ratio that was in this recipe. Yes, and it will keep in your fridge for up to 6 months, because it's got a lot of salt in it. Don't be tempted to taste it. Everybody's done it at least once, but only once. Now, the other instruction that I just skipped past there so that I could get it cooking was to remove the measuring cup. We want more steam to escape while we're cooking. And I didn't get my basket out when I was prepping, but it has asked us to put the basket on the lid instead. So we're just letting that reduce down a little bit while it's cooking. I'm going to leave that there and pop back to Laura, who's going to show us how her dough is working.
Or actually popping back to me.
Oh, okay.
Right times. So I think you're starting to see some exciting things that can be done. And I think the key thing to some of the girls and the way they're talking is that we can make slight changes to the recipes that are in Cookidoo. You don't always have to follow them. I think the key thing when you get Thermomix and all your consultants at delivery mention this, the maximum liquid is a key thing that you've got to be careful about when it comes to fiddling around with the recipe. But otherwise, adding different flavors, I mean, by all means, or swapping out a vegetable for another vegetable, as long as that weight ratio, etc., meets the recipe, it's perfectly fine. So, if you've ever concerned about that, that's what the consultants are for. A quick text message or a call into your personal consultant will actually help answer that question. So make sure that you're doing that. All right, I'd like to actually introduce you to Cookidoo and just one or two key features that the girls have mentioned that we haven't actually, I think a lot of people have got an opportunity to learn in that space. I'm just going to share my screen here and hopefully you can all see this. This is our Cookidoo screen, and there's a couple of things while the pumpkin soup is cooking, a couple of things I wanted to really touch on. When you're in your main screen of Cookidoo, how many of you actually scroll down and see what's in this front screen? Because there's a lot of gold in here. Sometimes they're posting about new things, new recipes, new cookbooks, whole heap of new cookbooks in there. These cookbooks are featuring our new attachment, which is the spiralizer, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later at the end. But there's lots of content in this front section. So if you haven't yet, make some time to scroll through this. It can be seen on your computer, on your iPad, all of it, it's available, and you can just jump into all these little different areas, and there's lovely tutorials and things like that. All the cooking modes are explained and little videos to show you how to use those. What we're going to talk about today is, however, searching for something that when you're looking for an ingredient, maybe something like we produced buttermilk, for an example, and you want to talk about, you want to search what's available when it comes to using buttermilk. You could go and search recipes just by typing that in, but we've got 1,851 results to go through, and that's a lot of recipes for us to scroll through. A quicker way to get around this, if you don't know, is over to the left here where you've got recipe. You can actually flip that and actually turn this into collections, and now you've got cookbooks that are related to, that have some buttermilk recipes in them. So if you've not done anything like that by changing that little selection over to cookbooks, it works for everything. So, sometimes you might be looking for, something Italian, say, just a cuisine. Whereas if I was in the actual recipes and I just typed in, Italian, I'm going to get a whole lot of recipes. But if I want something quite specific, going into my collections is a nicer way to go. And I can actually look, there's Italian desserts there, or, Italian made pasta recipes. So you've got cookbooks that are relating to what it is that you're searching from. Is there anybody that has come across any concerns when you're looking for something, or issues with things like, oh, I can't find it, or I'm just getting a whole bunch of main meals, but I really only just wanted an entree? If that's what's bothering you, go into the filters, because your filters have got all sorts of fine tuning in here to make sure that when you're searching, again, you can reduce the number of recipes that appear. You might be just looking for something that's a quick starter, or a main dish with fish. Those will help. As you're scrolling through here, just remember you've got the ability to actually search in various countries and regions from around the world as well. So if you haven't explored your filter section yet, go in and have a look at the filters. Have a look around at the cookbooks that are available to you, because all of that is going to help make looking through Cookidoo a lot easier for you. So is there any questions that we've got around Cookidoo or filters or anything in that space? Does anybody have any questions? What have we got in our chat? See anything in our chat?
Linda, I was going to say, do you want to show them how they can search by specific modes? So if you wanted to access those high heat onion recipes.
Great idea. So when we're looking at a mode of cooking, and thanks for that prompt, Kirsty, I knew I was in here for a reason. Sometimes they're just sitting there just going, I'm supposed to be saying something. Okay, so if I'm talking about high heat, which is one of the features that you saw at the very, very start when Kirsty was doing the onions. Now, yeah, I could go again through and find recipes, but there's a whole collection and a wonderful collection when it comes to high heat cooking. And when you go into these, I bet you didn't even know that there's recipes, vegetable recipes that you can actually get fabulous sautéed using that high heat mode, like the capsicums, the mushrooms, oh God, the zucchinis and the eggplants. All of those can be made into beautiful side dishes or additions where you're starting them off in your Thermomix to add to another dish that you're actually cooking. So keep that in mind. Now, if you like this area, if you like this type of collection, are you all aware that if you just press the little save button, that actually will save it in your recipes? So we have 3 headings across the top here. Explore my recipes in my week. If you clicked on my recipes, you've got on the left-hand side here, all created and saved. And if you press saved, you could actually keep all your cookbooks on the left here that you like, that you've found. So that's cookbooks or collections. The difference between a cookbook is it's a printed version that's now gone into electronic version, whereas what we call our collections are specific groups of recipes, maybe put together by one of our top chefs or our recipe kitchen. But there's lots of gold in here if you keep them in here, because there seems to be a theme in mine about cocktails. I'm sorry about that. But it's a little bit the same as when you're going into your created area here, that you can actually create little folders for yourself. I liked Kirsty's wonderful favorite recipes. So I've dumped all her favorites in there as well as my favorites, all my favorite dips, my favorite desserts. And it's very simple to do that. So if you're not storing them, have a look. There's a wonderful learning clip that you can actually get yourselves access to through the official Thermomix YouTube channel. So if you're going onto the Thermomix YouTube channel, there's lots of content and teaching you how to do certain things. One of the key ones there is teaching you about all the little things that you can do in Cookidoo. So if you haven't seen those little videos yet, pop in to the Thermomix Australia official YouTube channel. Okay, are we ready to jump in with somebody? I'm just wondering. No,
I
yes.
can show you the bread if you want.
All right, let's go over.
So
I'm just going to stop.
yeah, that's all good. I would normally let this rise longer. Can you hear me? Yeah. Like half an hour, but just for the sake of today, it doesn't matter. I have had it wrapped up in my silicone dough mat. So I think it's called the Thermomix mat. Because this traps in the heat, meaning it will rise very nicely. But I'll unwrap it just to show you for the sake of today. Yeah, so normally I would let it rise longer. But look, this is a very stretchy sort of sticky dough, and your doughs are going to vary in their stickiness depending on what it is. The stickiest I've ever come across is focaccia. That is got more moisture content than a lot of other doughs, which results in that lighter, the holes that you get through focaccia. Whereas, a normal basic dough is going to be firmer dough that's less sticky, which is just a normal bread. This is somewhere halfway in between. So anyway, what I'm going to do is show you how to put it in your tin for those who have the Thermomix bread tin or want to get it. This is if you want a perfectly square result. So you can just put your dough in there. I am just going to grab it with my hands and let it be sticky. Just plonk it in there. Because I want to show you how to use that tin, because we have some people who have used it the wrong way. And the mat's really good for working with pastries as well. So if you're wanting to do short crust or puff pastry or whatever, any kind of biscuits or whatever, this, because it's non-stick, it's really good, and it's got your measurements. There's a ruler down the side, and the measurements in the middle are really handy if you're rolling out pies to get that perfect circle. It's really good. So I'm going to just push the dough. I'm kind of want to push it into all the corners. Doesn't matter too much because as it rises, it will fill all the corners. So don't stress too much. But that's our tin. And so what I would normally do now is let that rise until it's about 4/5 of the way up. So you'll know it's a few centimeters from the top. Once it's a few centimeters from the top, it's ready to go in the oven. If you want a perfectly square loaf, you're going to want to use your lid. Now, to put the lid on, the mistake some people have made is putting it on, holding the handle and putting it on like this. Now, the problem is when you take that off, this ridge here is going to rip the top of your dough. So what you want to do is have it handle side first and slide that along. And you can feel that just slides very nicely on and off to make a perfectly square loaf. Another option you have when you're making dough is for those who have the sensor. So if you have the sensor, which looks like this, there is a mode for it on your Thermomix mode screen. There is also an app for it. When you get the sensor, it tells you, but there's an app called Cooking Center and it's green right down the bottom there. Either one, it's going to look the same, whether you do it on your Thermomix screen or on the app. But what you want to do is take your sensor out of its charging dock, and I can show you on the screen. So we want to come down. I've got it down the bottom because I don't use it as much as my other apps. You may not have realized you can edit the order of your apps. And just choose your temperature. Choose what you're going to make. So you could use this in roast, steak, chicken fillets, whatever, cakes, to make sure you get the perfect texture of cakes. But today I'll choose bread, and I like to choose basic dough. And it's going to tell me that I want the inside of my bread to be 96 degrees. That's my goal. So if I press send, now it tells me what to do. It's telling me to insert the probe. So I would come here and insert it wherever. If it's a free-form loaf, you could put it on the edge, but I want it to sort of just go in there. Now, what you can do as well, if you're worried it won't stick there where you want it to stick, which I'm thinking in this case is the situation, the bottom of your sensor, just pull this out of the here. This will let this stick on the edge, and you can put your sensor through it and stick it on the edge so that it stays where you want it, because you want to avoid, the instructions tell you how to do this anyway, and it comes with little cute videos, but you want to avoid the end of it being on your tin, because this end here is measuring the ambient temperature and we want that to be correct. And you just want your probe sticking in. As it rises, it will reach up to where the line is. And so it's going to tell you when to take the bread out of the oven to make sure you get the perfect result of bread. How cool is that? It's really cool. So I'll press OK on this. And so it's telling me that right now my dough is 31 degrees and we want it to reach 96 degrees. And it's giving me an estimate. I haven't put it in the oven yet, so obviously it's saying 50 minutes. When I put it in the oven, this will all change quickly. And as it reaches the end of the time, it'll ding to you and say, get out of the oven. And then it tells you how long it wants you to rest for. And then it tells you when it's ready. It's like very cool, this sensor. So you can use it in lots of things. It just takes the guesswork out of when you're cooking and baking is not in the Thermomix. The Thermomix gives us perfect results, but sometimes we're cooking in an oven or on the stove or in the Varoma, and we want to get that perfect results, and that's where the sensor comes in.
Although I
Yeah,
have
if you, sorry. Oh, if you don't have a sensor, how to tell when your bread's cooked is this is non-stick, so it will just tip out. You can pull it out of the oven, tip it out, and knock on the bottom of it. If it sounds hollow, it's ready. And that's sort of, it'll be in a period of time, whereas this will be perfect every time. So that's me. Thanks, Linda.
Awesome. And while we're talking about bread, what I wanted to do was share with you all, we've got a wonderful cooking class on tomorrow. If you're interested in sourdough bread, there's a class that you could register for as well. Now, because it's one of our specialty classes, there is a fee of $15. If you can't make it live, you can actually pay for it and then you will receive the recording. How you'll find that class, like some of our other specialty classes, not all our classes can be found with a consultant. So let me just show you where you can find other classes. If you're on the main Thermomix page and you go across to events and you click on events, what you'll find is there's this tab that will open and you can actually see what's on, type in your area, and you'll find all the cooking classes that are in your location. So as you can see, we've got a class listed there just on the top. That's the one that we're issuing tomorrow. So if you're interested in joining us for tomorrow's class, Thermomix main website, going across to events, and that's how you're going to find all the classes from around Australia and New Zealand. Some of them are online, some of them are face-to-face. Okay, so back to the wonderful Kirsty McGibbon, and she, I think, is ready for our soup. Let me spotlight you.
Thank you. Okay, so our soup has finished cooking. I've just taken the basket off the top. You might be able to see the steam coming out the top there. Now it's asking me to put in some cream. It's optional. One of the cool, I mean, Laura showed you before how you can preview the full recipe to check the tips. On this particular recipe, if we were to have a look at the recipe detail again, under the tips, there's also variations, and it talks about how to do an Asian style pumpkin soup. It is absolutely delicious. Unfortunately, there are some people that I live with who don't like it because it's got coriander and chili, and what else has it got in there? Let me remember. Ginger, chili, coriander, lemongrass. Absolutely delicious. So if you're making that version, it says to use coconut cream instead of regular cream. But given that we're just doing the basic pumpkin soup tonight, I'm just going to come to the top, click continue with the recipe, and we're just going to put in some of my leftover whipped cream from the other day when we made the buttermilk scones. And I'm going to ignore that it says 15 grams because I'm just going to use up everything that's left. Might as well. There we go. And all that is left to do with this soup now is to just blend it. So we've replaced the basket that was on top while we were cooking, allowing more steam out. We've popped the measuring cup back on instead now because we are going to blend that. Now, because this recipe can be cooked in any of the models, it talks about turning the speed up slowly, but because we're in a TM6 and we know we've got this soft start built into the TM6, I'm actually going to put a bookmark in this recipe. If you don't know how to do this, you just press the home button. It takes you out of the recipe back to that home screen. Now I can swipe across and I can access the blend mode, which has got that beautiful soft start built into it. So I don't have to stand there going click, 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 and turning it up slowly. So I'm just going to blend that. And while I do, I'm going to show you some bread that I cooked earlier.
So you can't hear Kirsty because she's blending, but this is the buttermilk bread, the same one that I just made tonight that I've put in my bread tin, but she's done a freeform loaf. And she had her silicone mat on top of it to get that flat top. That's how you get that flat top. And she's just cutting in to show us what it looks like on the inside. So very exciting. I know her family have been waiting for her to cut into this.
Perfect timing. Yes, the family have been waiting as well. They came home and they were like, oh, can we have some? So we thought rather than poor Laura having to make multiple loaves at her end, I would do the pre-cooked loaf. It smells amazing. The smell of freshly cooked bread, and it's lovely and crusty on the bottom. I had to really work to cut through that. So that is going to be delicious with some maybe freshly made peanut butter or some Vegemite on there as a little after dinner treat before the kids go to bed. They're teenagers, they'll be up after me. Yeah, so we've got our beautiful pumpkin soup. We've got our buttermilk bread. Laura's also got some buttermilk bread and some beautiful fresh butter to go on hers. So from just a few basic ingredients and the help of Thermomix, you can create really tasty, wholesome food very quickly and easily. Did you want to add anything there, Laura?
Yes, I actually wanted to say, so tonight you will have seen us using some mix shop items, and Linda's been putting the links in the chat so handily. Thank you so much, Linda. I wanted to just say, if you may not realize that if you want to get $100 mix shop voucher, you just need to refer a friend to your consultant, whoever your consultant is, refer your friend to them. When they buy a Thermomix, you get $100 mix shop voucher. So you can be buying all these Butterbells and silicon mats and bread tins and all the things we've been showing you. And it's each time. So the more friends you refer, the more vouchers you get. And if you haven't joined up for My Mix Rewards, which I think Linda would be finding you a link for that at some point. If you haven't signed up for that yet, you can get a $15 voucher upon signing up. And then on your birthday, you get $10. And then each point you spend in the mix shop, you're earning more vouchers. So you'll just be able to get everything in the mix shop, which is really cool. Obviously, the best way to earn all of these items is to become a consultant, because they just send them to us. We're always earning great things. But yes, those vouchers are really handy as well. So you may want to consider that.
And another really great reason to think about joining the business at the moment is we've got some really amazing joining offers right now. Did you want to talk about those, Laura, or do you want me to? Sorry, I just kind of jumped in there.
No, that's great. Yeah, you can go for it.
Yeah, so look, if you don't already have a TM6, we have an amazing offer at the moment where you can come on board and we actually loan you a TM6 for 2 months. If you sell 3 TM6s or pre-sales of the TM7 will be opening in early April. April. What month are we? February, May, early April. So if you sell 3 Thermomixes of either model in your first 2 months, then we let you keep that TM6. There's no deposit. If at any time you decide that it's not for you, either the Thermomix or being a consultant, you can return it and there's no charge. Or maybe you only sell 1 or 2 Thermomixes, then you can just pay out the balance if you would like to keep it. So we've never offered this before. It's an amazing opportunity if you've been thinking that you would like a Thermomix in your kitchen, but you didn't really want to part with that sort of money. The other amazing opportunity we have at the moment is that if you already have a TM6, you can come on board as a consultant and you can be one of the first to get your hands on a TM7. So starting from, I think, tomorrow or Thursday, you'll be able to sign up and bring the Thermomix that you already own, and you can start selling as a consultant, either model again. But if you sell 6 before the end of June, you have actually earned yourself an amazing new TM7 before the general public have been able to get their hands on them. So that's a really exciting opportunity. Existing consultants, we're all very excited as well to be able to get our hands on our TM7s. Just another great perk of being a consultant. Yes, so if you are interested in finding out a bit more about the TM7, there is a landing page on the Thermomix Australia website. You can have a bit of a scroll around there. There's a little bit of information. We've still got more information coming, we hope. But you can register your interest. Make sure you pop in your consultant's name if you're still in touch with your consultant. And then as more information becomes available, we can get in touch with you and answer your questions. Now, I think we've mentioned a couple of times that for anybody who is in the market for a TM6, because, you know, we've got the early adopters who are just going to jump on the TM7, but then we've got lots of other people who prefer to go with the tried and tested favorite that is still the current model. So with the TM6 at the moment, there's over $1,000 worth of extras that you get with it. So Laura mentioned the glider board, a second bowl blade and lid set. That's your biggest ticket item. That's nearly $400 worth. The cutter that I used for the onions earlier, the new spiralizer, which we haven't used tonight, but you can do your zoodles and your spirals if you really want to zhuzh up your dishes. What else have we got in there? An extra 12 months Cookidoo, so a total of 15 months. What have I forgotten? The blade cover peeler. I think that all adds up to $1,000. That's it. Yeah. There's so many options there. So that is an amazing run out bundle gift with purchase with the TM6 at the moment. Or if you've already got a TM6 and you wanted to get your hands on the cutter or the spiralizer, Linda's just popped up there our host reward catalogue, which we always like to keep fresh and relevant. So have a chat with your consultant about hosting a demonstration, and you can get your hands on one of those items at a reduced price.
Before we go, I think I'll just share that bundle offer if I can. Just one moment. I'm just trying to bring it up and doing 100 things at the same time. About 20 screens open, just going, oh, I'm sure it's here somewhere. You can all just, you know, talk in the background. It'd be lovely.
You're on mute. If anybody has a question and wants to pop off mute or pop it in the chat, if you can type quickly enough, we're happy to stay on for a couple of minutes and answer any extra questions. Actually, while Linda's just finding that flyer, I might just show you the beautiful pumpkin soup. We can just, oh, there we go. Thank you. So there's, oh, beautiful pumpkin soup. I might pour some of that into a bowl so you can see the texture, silky smooth. My daughter loves pumpkin soup, so she's very excited that I was making this tonight. And just remember, yeah, you can play around with the veggies a little bit, get a different texture, slightly different flavour. The coconut cream is also really delicious with that. So, yeah, there we go. Did you find the flyer, Linda?
I've got it. I've got it.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'll stop talking so you can share the screen and show that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll just got to get into here. Just one moment. Here we go. All right. So this is the bundle. Can everybody see that? I just want to make sure that everyone's got it on their screen.
Yeah.
I know we've touched on all of these wonderful accessories. Well, not all of them, because the blade cover peeler's there, and we haven't actually shown you that one, but that's another wonderful accessory with our TM6. The spiralizer, our new spiralizer, honestly, if you haven't seen this in action, have a look at it. You can have a quick glimpse on it again on the Thermomix in Australia YouTube channel. There's lots of little clips on it there, even on the official Thermomix webpage. The cutter was demonstrated by Kirsty today. An extra bowl and blade. Who wouldn't want an extra bowl and blade? Absolutely fantastic. And a great thing to actually get your hands on, and an additional Cookidoo subscription. So an additional 12-month subscription on top of your 3 months gives you 15-month subscription to Cookidoo. And Laura also showcased this evening the wonderful glider board that sits under the Thermomix. So if you know of anybody that, if you're maybe an owner of an earlier model and you're ready to upgrade, this is it. This is, you know, bang on the best offer you are going to get with over $1,000 of accessories. If you know of anybody that wants to get a Thermomix, hey, this is the time. Benefit from that $100 referral. Make sure that they're contacting, well, you're sharing the information with your consultant, and then you and your friend have buddied up on this one. They're going to buy a Thermomix. You're getting $100. They're getting over $1,000 as a bundle gift with purchase. So it's a fabulous time, the best time, I've got to say, to get your hands on a Thermomix at the moment. I've been around for nearly 13 years and I've never seen anything like this, I can assure you. What about you girls?
No,
Right.
not this
Yeah,
good.
it's a very good deal. And yeah, the TM6 is a great machine and it come with all these extras. It's fabulous.
Yeah. So look, we know that how are we going for time? We're probably just over, are we? But we'd just like to say if anybody wants to stay on, and we're happy to answer any questions that anybody's got about hosting a cooking demonstration, looking at the TM7, if you want to discuss anything that's going on when it comes to recipes or searching in Cookidoo, please stay, have a quick chat with us. We'd love to. And what are you going to do next? What's next for you? Are you attending tomorrow's cooking class, or are you booking your next Thermomix demonstration with your consultant? Or are you going to come and join?
Linda, can I just butt in again? Speaking of cooking classes, so we've got that beautiful sourdough class, and I think Tina's actually here. She is going to be presenting on the sourdough class tomorrow. But if you would like something in person, so you actually get to taste the food, my team will be running a class in Pymble on the 12th of March. So we would love to have you join us. It is a paid class because we're hiring a hall and we're going to actually feed you. But if you jump onto the Thermomix website, you can find that one if you search by New South Wales. So on the 12th of March, and the theme is saving time and money with your Thermomix. So I would love to have you join us if Pymble is a good location for you. And I think we'll pop that link in the follow-up email, as well as the recipes that we've used tonight.
Yeah, great. Tina, did you want to share anything about your wonderful class tomorrow? You might not be able to talk. But anyway,
again.
I think I've been muted and then unmuted.
You're up.
Hi. Yes, it's going to be a blast because we're going to have so much fun, and we have the sourdough in all the different stages. So it's going to be what would have been 8 hours of sourdough all broken up into samples for everyone to see. So hope everyone enjoys it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tina, for
Thank
sharing.
you.
And, I know for me, I was lucky enough to get a sample of Tina's sourdough starter, and it's been an amazing one. She had to give me all the lessons to feed it, and it's like feeding a child. But yeah, I've managed to keep it alive, Tina. Most proud with me. All right, well, we'll call it a night unless there's anybody that wants to stay on, please do. But otherwise, for everybody else, on behalf of Thermomix and the Sydney crew, we'd just like to say thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you in the company of us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again at one of our online classes or in-person classes, or maybe we might see you at one of our meetings when you join up to become a Thermomix consultant. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Loved cooking with you.